Mia's day at the diner was nothing out of the ordinary until Clint Eastwood walked in. She served him like any other customer, unaware of the life-changing moment that was about to take shape. When he left, he slipped something onto the table. A note. Mia opened it, her hands trembling. The words inside left her breathless, but they also raised one question. What did this mean for her? Mia wiped her hands on her apron, stealing a quick glance at the clock above the diner's counter. Almost 7 p.m. The dinner crowd was thinning, leaving behind a calm hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes. For most people, this little roadside diner was just a quick stop, a place to grab a meal before hitting the road again. But for Mia, it was more than that. It was survival. At 28 years old, she worked long hours here, making sure her 6-year-old son, Jordan, had everything he needed. Every paycheck, every tip went toward their tiny apartment, school supplies, and food on the table. Life hadn't been easy, but Mia had learned long ago that wishing for fairness wouldn't pay the bills. She simply had to keep going. Disrupting her train of thought, the bell above the door chimed, and Mia instinctively turned toward it. She expected another weary traveler, but instead a tall man walked in with a quiet confidence that made the air feel heavier. He wore a simple button-up shirt and jeans, his face shadowed by a hat pulled low. Something about him felt familiar. Then he looked up, and the breath caught in her throat. Clint Eastwood. Not just any celebrity, Clint Eastwood, the legend. Mia wasn't one to get starstruck. She barely had time to watch movies, let alone obsess over Hollywood actors. But this was different. Her late father had adored Eastwood's old westerns, and some of her fondest childhood memories were sitting beside him, watching those movies together. For a brief moment, she was 6 years old again, curled up on the couch, listening to her father's deep voice talk about the power of a true cowboy. But there was no time for memories. Clint had chosen a corner booth, and Mia knew it was her turn to serve him. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her notepad and pen and made her way toward the booth, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach. As she got closer, she noticed the details. The way his hands rested on the table, steady yet weathered, the piercing eyes beneath his hat that seemed to take in everything without giving much away. She stopped beside the table. For a moment, neither of them spoke. His gaze met hers, calm and unreadable. Mia swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the ridiculous way her heart was pounding. This wasn't just another customer. Clearing her throat, she finally found her voice. "Welcome to the diner. What can I get you tonight?" Clint Eastwood nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Coffee. Black." Just 2 simple words, but somehow Mia knew this was a night she would never forget. Before she could step away, his voice stopped her with a casual inquiry about how busy the night was. It wasn't often that customers engaged in small talk unless they were regulars. She replied with a faint smile, mentioning that it wasn't too bad and that it kept her moving. He nodded, his sharp gaze softening slightly, noting that she had a good rhythm, something not easily maintained in a place like this. Mia hesitated for a moment. Was that a compliment? And from Clint Eastwood, no less? The thought unsettled her as she returned to the counter to place his order. Her mind raced with curiosity. Why was he here in this small roadside diner, sipping from a chipped glass? A man of his stature could eat anywhere in the world, yet he was waiting for a simple burger like any other weary traveler. When the food was ready, she carefully placed the plate and coffee on his table, catching a brief, appreciative glance from him. He thanked her, and she responded casually, though a strange feeling lingered. This was just another ordinary night, yet something about it felt different. As she busied herself refilling cups and clearing tables, she couldn't help but glance back at him occasionally. He ate slowly, almost as if savoring every bite, while occasionally sipping his coffee. He seemed in no hurry, as if he had nowhere else to be. The way he sat there, contemplative, made her wonder if there was more to his visit than just a meal. Their eyes met a few times, and each time he gave her a polite nod, a silent acknowledgement that sent a flutter through her stomach. There was something strangely grounding about his presence, something that made her hyper-aware of the moment. When he was done, he lifted a hand slightly, signaling for her. Mia wiped her hands on her apron and approached with measured steps, keeping her expression neutral. He mentioned that the meal was perfect, one of the best burgers he had in a long time. The compliment caught her off guard, and she chuckled, promising to let the cook know. For a brief moment, he simply studied her. His gaze wasn't piercing, but there was a depth to it, as though he were searching for something familiar. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken thoughts, until he finally remarked that she had a good energy about her and reminded him of someone from his past. Mia blinked, uncertain how to respond. Was it a compliment or a memory? She couldn't quite tell, but a warmth spread through her cheeks nonetheless. Something about this encounter, this seemingly simple moment, made the ordinary night feel just a little less ordinary. Mia focused on getting through her shift, just like any other night. Clint watched her for a moment, something unreadable in his eyes, before nodding slightly. That's the real trick, isn't it? Just making it through. Before she could respond, he reached into his pocket, pulled out some bills, and placed them on the table along with a folded piece of paper. He told her to keep the change and to read the note when she had a moment. Then, without another word, he stood up and walked out, the bell over the door jingling softly as he left. For a moment, Mia stood frozen, staring at the note as if it held some secret she wasn't ready to uncover. What could he have possibly written? And why did it feel so important? But there was no time for questions. Tables still needed clearing, and customers were waiting. She tucked the note into her apron and went back to work. The diner quieted as the night wore on. The last few customers lingered over coffee. The jukebox played a soft tune, and the hum of conversation faded into the background. By the time she reached Clint's booth to wipe it down, the note in her pocket felt heavier than before. Once her shift ended, she slipped into the back room, hesitating before pulling out the paper. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded it. He had noticed her, not just as a waitress, but as a person. He wrote about her strength, how she carried herself with quiet strength, and how she reminded him of someone important from his past. He didn't know her story, but he could tell she had faced her share of struggles. And because of that, he wanted to do something for her, no strings attached. Mia's breath hitched as she read the last lines. Inside the folded note was a check. Her eyes widened as she saw the amount, $10,000. Her knees gave out, and she sank onto the bench, pressing the paper to her chest as emotions surged through her. It wasn't just the money, though that alone was staggering. It was the fact that someone had seen her, really seen her, in a way no one had in a long time. She had spent years feeling invisible, just another face in a crowded diner, another server blending into the background. But tonight, Clint Eastwood, a man she had only ever seen on a movie screen, had looked past the routine and recognized something in her that she had almost forgotten herself. Tears welled up, a mix of gratitude and disbelief washing over her. This moment, this unexpected act of kindness, changed something inside her. The question now wasn't just, why me? But what will I do with this gift? Mia sat in the back room, gripping the check as if it might disappear. The numbers on it were staggering, far beyond anything she had ever held in her hands. It felt unreal. Her mind spun through everything this money could change. The stack of overdue bills on her counter, Jordan's worn-out sneakers, the leaky faucet she had learned to ignore. This money could solve so many problems, yet it wasn't just the check that left her shaken. It was Clint's words, the way he had looked at her, as if he truly saw her. She wiped her face and took a deep breath. This wasn't something she could keep to herself. Within minutes, Tasha was sitting across from her in an empty booth, reading the note with furrowed brows. As she reached the end, she let out a low whistle, shaking her head in disbelief. Mia barely found her voice. She hadn't done anything special. She had just gone through her shift like any other night. But Clint had noticed. Not just the way she worked, but something deeper, something even she struggled to see in herself. Tasha studied her for a moment before speaking. "This could change everything," she said, her tone filled with certainty. Mia nodded but felt a weight settle in her chest. It didn't feel real. Why had he chosen her? What had he seen? She wanted to believe she was worthy of this kind of generosity, but doubt crept in, whispering that there had been some kind of mistake. She left the diner that night with the check still burning in her pocket. Back home, she sat at the small kitchen table, the note and check laid out before her. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional creak of the old pipes. The dim light flickered overhead, casting shadows across the worn tabletop. She thought of the sacrifices she had made, the nights she had gone without sleep to keep everything from falling apart. She had learned how to stretch a single meal, how to smile through exhaustion, how to carry burdens without letting anyone see the weight of them. And somehow a stranger had looked at her and recognized that. The possibilities ran through her mind. This money could cover the rent for months, fix the car she was never sure would start in the morning, or finally give Jordan opportunities she had only dreamed of. It was a chance at breathing room, at stability, at something more than just getting through. She picked up the note again, reading Clint's words one more time. "I hope it brings you some peace. People like you deserve to be seen. And I see you." A slow exhale escaped her lips. Maybe for the first time in years she could believe that. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a mistake. This was a gift. One she had earned in ways she hadn't even realized. And now she had to decide what to do with it. Mia sat at the kitchen table, staring at the check, her mind tangled in thoughts. The amount written on it didn't just represent money. It symbolized hope, a second chance, a door she never thought would open. For years, she had worked herself to exhaustion, stretching every dollar to keep Jordan fed and safe. She had sacrificed sleep, meals, and even dreams, all while feeling like the world barely noticed her struggle. But now, for the first time, someone had seen her. Clint Eastwood had seen her. She traced the edge of the check with her fingertips, remembering her father's words from long ago. He had always been her biggest supporter, reminding her that she had a fire inside, that she wasn't meant to just survive. She was meant to live. Somewhere along the way, she had forgotten that. Life had chipped away at her confidence, one unpaid bill at a time, one missed opportunity after another. But now something stirred inside her, something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Pulling a notepad from the counter, she started scribbling down ideas. The most obvious was finally taking an accounting course, something she had once dreamed of but had never been able to afford. She imagined sitting in a classroom, books open, finally working towards something she wanted. Then there was Jordan, her heart, her reason for every sacrifice. Maybe she could set up a small savings account for him, something that would help secure his future. But beyond her own dreams, a different thought kept returning. Giving back. She thought about all the people she had met over the years. Single mothers like her, workers barely scraping by, folks doing their best in a world that often felt indifferent. Clint's kindness had changed her life in an instant. What if she could do the same for someone else? The idea lingered, filling her with an unfamiliar sense of purpose. By morning, her decision was made. The sun streamed through the small window as she sipped coffee, watching Jordan play with his action figures. The weight of uncertainty still sat in her chest, but it no longer felt paralyzing. Instead, it fueled her. She called Tasha, her closest friend, who immediately understood. Without hesitation, Tasha promised to watch Jordan for the afternoon. With Jordan happily settled, Mia drove to the bank, the check still feeling unreal in her hands. The teller, a young woman with bright eyes, glanced at the amount with mild surprise, but didn't ask questions. As the check cleared, Mia felt a strange mix of relief and determination. This money wasn't just for her, it was a new beginning. Stepping outside, she took a deep breath, feeling the crisp morning air on her skin. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in a long while, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. After Mia left her job at the bank, a wave of uncertainty and excitement washed over her as she stood outside the community college. She had passed by it countless times over the years, always wondering what it would be like to sit in a classroom again, to learn something new, to challenge herself. For so long, she had felt stuck in a routine, but now, with a quiet determination, she knew it was time for change. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked into the admissions office, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. The woman behind the desk welcomed her with a warm smile, asking how she could help. Mia, though nervous, found her voice. She knew what she wanted. She was ready to enroll in accounting, a field she had always been interested in but had never pursued. The woman's friendly attitude put her at ease as they quickly began the process, and as Mia filled out the forms, a new sense of purpose filled her heart. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about showing her son, Jordan, that it was never too late to follow your dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. As she walked out of the admissions office, a new thought lingered in her mind. What if this was just the beginning? What if Clint's gesture of kindness had done more than help her financially? What if it had sparked something bigger within her? Something that could change not just her life, but the lives of others around her. She wasn't sure, but she felt the beginnings of something powerful. The following months were a blur of hard work and new challenges. Mia balanced her long shifts at the diner with evening classes at the community college. It wasn't easy. There were late nights and many moments of doubt. But each day she felt herself growing stronger, more focused, and more hopeful about the future. Jordan noticed the changes too. He was proud of his mom for going to college, telling his friends with a bright smile that she was pursuing her dreams. Every time Mia heard him say that, her heart swelled with pride. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. But Mia's transformation wasn't just about her own growth. Inspired by Clint's unexpected generosity, she felt compelled to give back. She began setting aside a portion of her earnings to help others in her community who were struggling. Whether it was paying for groceries for a single mother or covering the cost of textbooks for a student, Mia quietly stepped in to make a difference. She didn't want to just change her own life. She wanted to help others see that kindness and compassion could spark change in ways they might not expect. One evening, as she sat at the kitchen table studying her accounting textbook, Jordan tugged at her sleeve. His big brown eyes were full of curiosity as he asked about Clint, wondering if the man who had helped them so much would ever return to the diner. The question caught Mia off guard, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. She didn't know if Clint would ever come back, but his impact had been undeniable. He had changed her life in a way that would last forever. Mia gently ruffled Jordan's hair, her heart full as she reassured him. Even if Clint didn't return, his kindness would always be a part of their story. It had reminded Mia of the power of small acts of kindness, to lift others up when the world feels heavy, to see people for who they truly are, and to pay it forward. As Mia closed her textbook and prepared for bed that night, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she wasn't just going through the motions. She was thriving, growing with each step she took. And the next time a stranger walked into her section at the diner, Mia greeted them with warmth and grace, knowing that sometimes even the smallest interactions could change a life forever. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, could create ripples far beyond what we could see. What do you think of Clint Eastwood's act of kindness? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.